Geometry 8-4, extra practice, worksheet problem number 17. I'm trying to find this angle right here. I've got two sides. They're both adjacent to this angle, but this one, since it's opposite the right angle, this one's going to be called the opposite. I'm sorry, I said that completely incorrectly. Forget what I just said. I was distracted by that bell ringing. Since the right angle's here, since it's opposite the right angle, it's called the hypotenuse, right? You got to make sure you get these right, as I almost didn't do. This is the hypotenuse. This one then would get the title of adjacent. Even though this one is also adjacent to the angle, since this one is the hypotenuse, it has to be called the hypotenuse. This is the adjacent. What I usually don't write is that when we think adjacent, we're actually talking about the adjacent leg and the opposite leg. This would be the opposite leg up here. This is the adjacent leg. This is the hypotenuse. So the two numbers that we have to work with are the adjacent leg and the hypotenuse. The only trig function that uses adjacent and hypotenuse is the cosine function. That uses adjacent and hypotenuse. So the cosine of our angle equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And since you have these powerful little computers called calculators, we're going to let our calculator do all the work for us by just doing the inverse cosine of this number right here. So I'm going to do inverse cosine of 26 divided by 28. Okay, inverse cosine of this number right here. So this is what we're going to plug in on our calculator, and it's going to give us the measurement of that angle that we're trying to find. And so let me grab my calculator. There's my calculator. And I'm going to do inverse cosine. I do second and then cosine to get that inverse cosine. And then I'm going to do 26 divided by 28. I'm going to hit enter, and I get 21.78. Come on. There we go. 21.786. So if I'm rounding it to the nearest whole degree, I would round this at 22. So if I was saying, like the directions say, whole degree rounding, I would say 22 degrees, because this 7 tells me that this 1 needs to be rounded up. Since this 7 is bigger than 5, it rounds it up. But since you're used to rounding to the nearest tenth, then you would look at this number and you say, okay, I'm going to round it. So this 8 tells me that the 7 needs to be rounded up, so it'd be 21.8. So I would accept either one of these answers for this question. This is what it's asking for in the directions, but since you're used to rounding to the nearest tenth, I would have been okay with this as well, because that's actually a nice habit to be in. So 21.8 degrees is fine. 22 degrees is also fine. Either way you go, I'm fine with either one, and that is the answer to problem number 17.